Jai Bhim, Jai Mulnivasi friends. Once again, we are back with a very splendid subject in front of us. This Sunday at 8:30, I welcome you all from MNT News Network. Friends, today again we are joining in for a very important subject. You all know the Waqf bill has been passed last week, and that is why we have taken this very important subject in front of you. So the subject is Waqf law and the Common Family Code. So very impactful subject, and it is very much required today to understand this subject very well by the Bahujan Samaj and the Mulnivasi Samaj. And today we have a very significant speaker in front of us. This is Mulnivasi Dr. Ayaz Ahmad ji, who is the Fulbright visiting scholar at the Department of Philosophy, Columbia University in New York. My friends, the topic today is been at gathering a lot of talk back in India, and the bill of Waqf Bill Amendment 2025 has been passed last Friday. So, my friend, let us understand what the Waqf Amendment Bill it talks about, and let us understand this subject in deep from our honorable guest, who is speaking from US, which Mr. Mulnivasi, Dr. Ayaz Ahmad ji. Sir, I welcome you to this discussion today on this very important topic.
Thank you for having me. Jai Bhim, Jai Samvidhan.
Jai Bhim, Jai Samvidhan, Jai Mulnivasi sir. And to our viewers, Dr. Ayaz Ahmad is Fulbright visiting scholar at the Department of Philosophy, Columbia University, New York. And he is also a guest writer in many of the weekly and dailies we have in India. So recently, his article in Forward Press is very is about talking time. So everybody should go into it and read it. So let us talk about this Waqf Amendment Bill 2025. Sir, I would like to come to you. Now this Waqf Amendment Bill has been passed last Friday. And since couple of months, this bill has been talk of a town in India, and lot of opposition and towards the Muslim community is talking about in both the ways. Some sections are supporting it and some sections are against the Waqf bill. So it is been at limelight. So we would like to understand what's the Waqf bill is about, and why the recent amendment bill is been talking is been raising the volumes amongst the majority of the Mulnivasi Samaj. So coming back to you, sir.
Yes, the recent amendments which have been carried out to the Waqf law, they certainly try to change disturb the status quo. We have a certain understanding from pre-colonial times that there are certain religious and charitable properties which are dedicated by individuals in the name of God for religious and charitable purposes, and they must be covered under one law. That is the kind of understanding which has continued even during post-constitutional setup. Now, certain amendments, those amendments have been very popularly discussed. They have been very contentiously debated. So the way BJP has managed to frame the question is either you support the amendment which are being carried out or you oppose. Either way, as far as Pasmanda Bahujan movement and Pasmanda Bahujan interest is concerned, either way it is a defeat. Why do I say this? If you support it, what does it mean? It says that there is Waqf, which is religious property, and in which is under control of Muslim. Now non-Muslim should also come. Certain regulations should also try to take over the management and administration within the framework of Muslim versus non-Muslim. So you support. Then if you support the amendment, you are trying to say and accept that, well, the Indian society is divided into two categories. Muslim and non-Muslim, and now you are supporting the inclusion of Muslim and reforms and non-Muslim. So you are basically operating within the binary of Muslim, non-Muslim. If you
Right.
oppose it, then also what are you saying? You are saying that, well, the society is divided into Muslim and non-Muslim, and in the Muslim properties, non-Muslim should not be part of it. So ultimately, either way, the broad framework is Muslim, non-Muslim, and non-Muslim broadly, legally, and legally especially, it is Hindu. So you play within this Muslim versus Hindu binary. You accept the broad framework that Indian social is only constituted by two poles, a Muslim pole and a Hindu pole, and then all the question of management and administration of religious and charitable property should be discussed and debated within this framework. As far as the social, having Indian social historically constituted by caste as an enclosed class, as Baba Sahib Ambedkar beautifully explained it, that question cannot come into picture. That does not figure into this. What about the vast majority of the middle caste and lower caste and Adivasi, SC, ST, OBC communities who have historically remained excluded from any such religious and charitable arrangement, irrespective of religion? Doesn't matter which religion to a particular caste group, which is within now SC, ST, OBC communities, what I call Pasmanda Bahujan communities. What about their interest in the property, which has been dedicated for certain public purposes, even if it happens to be personal property? We know that personal property is not and has never been, nobody is born with personal property. It is through social capital that property is inherited and sometimes acquired. So claim of different section of society in enjoyment and use of property is very valid, but within this dominant paradigm of Hindu versus Muslim, once we accept this for the even for the purpose of debate, that the society is divided into two categories, Muslim and non-Muslim, then we enter into a quicksand. The game
Yeah.
is already lost. If the society is only divided into Muslim and non-Muslim or Muslim and Hindu, then the interests of the vast majority, SC, ST, OBC communities, Pasmanda, Bahujan communities cannot be discussed or debated at all. They are already out by way of framing of the social, which we know is historically wrong. And that is the kind of damage that that framework has already caused huge damage to United States of India through partition. The upper
Yes.
caste communities cutting across religions, Ashraf Savarna, they have already played that game for over a century now, and they have managed to divide, violently partition what Baba Sahib Ambedkar used to call United States of India. And now, once
Yeah.
we accept this frame, even with reference to this Waqf law amendments and sustenance or modification, if we accept this broad framework, that society is divided into two poles only, Hindu and Muslim, Muslim and
Yeah.
Hindu, or Muslim and non-Muslim, then Bahujan interests are compromised from the very beginning. From the terms of the debate, we are excluded, Bahujan interests are excluded from the very beginning. And a community where by discussion of use and administration of property on the principle of justice, equality, and fraternity, that cannot be discussed in debate. You either support or oppose, either you are pro-Muslim or pro-Hindu, or then you are lost in that debate. So therefore, I thought that this is a good occasion to discuss the root causes. What are the root causes of this kind of, very often, very frequently, we these kind of debates are thrown into the public sphere, whereby we are either within supporting the Muslim or supporting the Hindu, or debating within the Hindu-Muslim paradigm. We have to get out of it. The whole we have to get out of the paradigm and then debate what should happen, and then we can have a debate, and we can have different interests of different section of the society on the table, and then we can decide, okay, how do we want to go forward with these things. But the root cause must be addressed. Why and how these kind of framing of public debate gets undergirded, gets circumscribed by this dominant paradigm of religion, Muslim versus Hindu, or Hindu versus Muslim.
Yeah. So what you have shed light on is that the current debate is being tried to put two poles in front of us, that is Hindus and Muslims, and that's been long tried by upper caste Muslim as well as the upper caste Hindus to to make a polarization in such a way that the deprived community is coming from SC, ST, OBCs within the Muslims also. So the real question of the thought process itself goes beyond. So nobody thought to think about in that dimension. So basically, that is what you are talking about. That this whole debate should be seen beyond these two poles, and particularly I would like to bring into before moving on to that question, while talking about this amendment, Prime Minister Narendra Modi talked about this as a watershed movement, as well as he's talking about it as a it will boost transparency, and it will safeguard the rights of the people. So particularly coming to this, has this been a watershed movement, as talked about the Prime Minister, and is this really will boost the transparency by bringing in this kind of an amendment? Please also talk on this, and we will then move on to specifically talk about why the Ashrafs within the Muslims is thinking about this amendment bill and what need to be done. So would like to have your responses on this.
This whole presentation of Hindu Muslim paradigm as watershed movement, that's how people who belong to BJP, RSS, Hindutva ecosystem, those who come from Brahmin Savarna background, uh, they like to think about that way. That any discussion, any debate, any change, any reform with reference to Hindu versus Muslim, howsoever regressive or anti-democratic or anti-egalitarian, anti-constitutional it might be, they try to, and they like to think of it as watershed movement. You know, so many thought that partition of India was a watershed movement. I mean, for Ashraf Savarna, they jointly voted. They jointly voted to partition India, and for them it might be a watershed movement, but for us it is a moment of great loss. For us, it is a matter of great pain, rather than any kind of watershed movement. Any division along religious line and violence along religious line and subjugation, agitation along religious line is a matter of shame and matter of pain. It is not a watershed movement at all. So, but the second question, that second aspect of the question, how Ashraf come into picture here? I mean, the whole paradigm, this whole possibility of reducing public sphere within the Hindu-Muslim paradigm, I have argued in the article, is facilitated by Ashraf failure to come to terms with democracy. And this is not a new phenomenon. This is a very old phenomenon. And I do not, blame it on the intellect or morality or ethics. It is a failure of imagination, because Ashraf themselves have suffered, and they are also suffering. They suffer, but still they are unable to come to terms with democracy. What is democracy about? That is the failure at the front of democracy itself is a source of continuous suffering of Ashraf, and as a result of Ashraf failure to come to terms with democracy, Brahmin Savarna are suffering, and different section of the Bahujan society are also suffering, because the democratic discourse and public sphere and the debate around policies and laws, it gets overwhelmed by this whole religious paradigm. How did Ashraf fail to come to terms with democracy? When the democracy was introduced gradually in a limited form by the British, you cannot exclusively blame Ashraf there. I mean, their blame is that they did not try to mobilize a majority. That society is divided into different stratas. Caste being the historical reality of is South Asia. So they did not make an attempt to mobilize a majority. For example, look at the constitution of All India Muslim League. So for Ashraf, they would try to mobilize All India Muslim League. They cannot imagine All India National League, for example, or All India Democratic League, All India Liberal League, whatever. There are many ways through which you can, for example, Brahmin Savarna, All India Congress Party. They did not say All India Brahmin Party. They did not say All
Yes.
India, So that is the failure, and
Exclusivity.
that, yeah, yeah. So that failure is also because of the bureaucratic practices. British had, they had this interest in constructing and reducing, simplifying the entire Indian socialist structure into two categories: Hindu versus Muslim. So they were contributing. Brahmin Savarna were also contributing. Sayyid Ashraf also contributed. So it's a joint production of a discursive field within which uh, Ashraf began to think of themselves as a permanent minority. That we are a minority, and then we are minority today, and we will remain minority forever, and then we will try to protect the minority interest, which is under a democratic paradigm, which is an impossible task to do. And today, more and more Ashraf come forward and say, we have lost this, we have lost that, we have lost. Yes, of course, you will lose everything, because you have refused to play the game of democracy through the tools which democracy offers, which means that you go and walk across different diverse sections of society. The social is always divided. You try to unify, try to bring people together. Do not try to preserve only your particular interest, but try to universalize it. You know, that is the failure which Ashraf have had. And because of the failure of the Ashraf, every other section of the society, Brahmin Savarna on one hand, whether they were liberal, secular, or conservative, communal, or the Shudra, everyone got fixed. You have to debate, because Ashraf are frozen entity in the field of the political. You have to first take into account, okay, this is a fixed position.
Hmm.
This will not change, and therefore I have to now modulate my politics, right? So everyone has to modulate, everyone has to adapt. I give this example of a canvas. You have a plain canvas, and you hand it over to the painter. Painter is free to apply his or her creativity on the canvas. But if you hand over a canvas where some figure is already prefixed on the corner or on the center, somewhere you have already something designed, a chair is already designed on the canvas.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
doesn't matter who do you hand over that painting. The painter, the artist will have to take into account this prefixed, permanently fixed figure, chair or table, and then accordingly, so it will have a totalizing effect. It will have a totalizing effect on the aesthetics, on the design of the painting. Similarly, because Ashraf have fixed themselves that they do not want to undertake democratic politics at all, so they would like to preserve Waqf law as it is, even when we have ample evidence there are religious and charities cutting across religion. And there are properties which need to be managed. There are temple properties, vihara properties, gurdwara properties. So we
Correct.
do need a law. We do need a law, and the discussion needs to take place. But no, Ashraf will say, well, we already have this law, and this law is cast in stone for all time to come. So now everyone has to modulate. And in that modulation, some I have argued that it has deliciously cooked the game of democracy in favor of Brahmin Savarna, because they, being the privileged, historically privileged and resourceful and powerful class, for them it is of great advantage, because they know in advance that if they design their policy keeping in mind Ashraf fixity of social and political position, then they can anticipate what other segment of the society are going to, how they are going to react. So if you design your politics keeping in mind Ashraf, how do Ashraf think, then you have a great advantage. Okay, so Ashraf will never have a rational, democratic, human debate on common family code. So I can say, well, let us have common family code. I, as a strategist of, say, conservative Brahmin Savarna, I would say, well, let us Ashraf think this way, I will think that way. And then Ashraf will react, and everyone will react along with them, by trying to become a secular formation. Ashraf think in a particular way on one subject, we will design how Ashraf will react. So the way Ashraf react, every other liberal, even liberal, secular, Brahmin, Savarna, different sections of Baudian society, everyone will react accordingly. You can anticipate. And that is a great advantage for any political strategies. And this is also the reason why this Hindutva mode of politics practiced by BJP RSS is a great success, They design
Because
their
they could
policies
anticipate,
to
because they could anticipate how the Ashraf is thinking and how its politics going to be impacted.
absolutely, along with Ashraf, every other formation. So even the liberal secular Brahmin servant, that the whole Congress, you can tell in advance. Even before the bill went to the parliament, I could tell that how Congress will behave, how Samajwadi Party will behave, how every single formation, how every other formation, political formation is going to react. I can tell this 50 years in advance. If I know 15 year in advance, all the different moves which my adversaries can take, no one can defeat me. I become invincible because I am designing my policies on the basis of a group which is permanently fixed, which is cast in stone, which is never going to undertake democratic politics, which is never going to try to mobilize a majority. And that is why Hindutva politics is such a great success. Therefore, Ashraf, failure to come to terms democracy is actually what is responsible for this whole watershed movement which Prime Minister has declared in the Parliament. Ashraf have themselves to blame.
So basically, considering Ashraf themselves has been a frozen entity, and they are considering themselves as the sun of the solar system, and that's where the policies has
Yes.
been hindered. So
Absolutely, that's a very apt metaphor, very beautiful metaphor. Yes.
Sir, I would like to, also mention in one of your article you have mentioned about common family code. I mean, it is
Hmm.
the take is completely, different from what the current, work amendment bill is talking about. So, can you just talk about something about, the common family code? I mean, you have recently now in your talk you have suggested about how the nationalized thought need to be, to be brought into the framework while discussing the whole Muslim context today. So can you talk about the common family code you are talking about, which need to be addressed in the current Waqf controversy?
Yes, yes. Common family code. You see, my thinking from coming from Phule Ambedkar and Sari Periyar tradition has always been that how do we design public spaces, laws, and policies which bring different section of the Bahujan society together. And that togetherness is for me, it is not adding political numbers. This community has 5%, this community 10%, this community 15%, and you just on the day of election you try to bring them together politically. No, that's not how we think. Ambedkarite tradition from the very beginning is always concerned with informing social, economic, and political life with the spirit of democracy. Our what he calls, we need to germinate associated mode of living. Associated mode, how can we think about a political, a public policy, a law which brings together? So from that point of view, my thinking on common family code has gone, and this it proceeds like this. If different section of the Bahujan society can establish family relationship with each other under a common law, right? Then the relationship between different section of of a Bahujan society, social and cultural relationships, they get much stronger. You have a family bond now, and the law should facilitate it rather than trying to operate through communal laws like Muslim law, Hindu law, Christian law, etc., etc. We have a common law in which family relationship among adults is possible, and in case there is any dispute, it can be resolved and addressed under one umbrella of common law. Here, I'm not talking about annihilation of cultural practices or differences. Those cultural practices can be preserved. Somebody wants to undertake, say, marriage ritual performance as per, say, Buddhist tradition, Muslim tradition, Islamic tradition, Sikh tradition, even Vedic tradition. People are free. People should be free to undertake their ritual practices through under one common law. That the idea is not to annihilate or completely eliminate the difference. The idea is that the possibility, because the space is shared, somebody has X faith, somebody has Y faith, some has, tribal people have different cultural practices, but if they are operating within the same social, cultural, and political sphere, want to form a family, the law should facilitate. A common law should facilitate. Law should not become a stumbling block. So, on the question of so common family code for me is a law, a common law, which is different from, which is, wrongly termed as uniform civil code, because of reasons that I've discussed elsewhere, but I can briefly tell. The idea with the uniform civil code is not that all the civil laws are to be codified at one place. So civil is not possible because you have hundreds and thousands of laws, and nobody and is suggesting that they can be codified. Practically, it is impossible to codify all the civil laws at one place. We are only
Correct.
talking about codifying the family law. Therefore, civil word goes and you bring family. We are only talking about consolidating family laws relating to marriage, inheritance, divorce, succession, etc., as well as religious
Yeah, that is a
charities.
big misunderstanding. Then
It's a very
as
serious, yeah. It's a very
civil code.
serious,
Yeah.
which is a terminological error, which is there in the constitution itself. Constitution uses uniform civil code, so people uses the first word uniform. The idea is not to uniformalize the cultural practices within the Hindu
Commonize,
law,
make it
right?
horizontal.
Yeah, within the Hindu law, Hindu Code Bill, which Baba Sahib Ambedkar piloted and spearheaded, you do have preservation of cultural diversity. So you can have your tribal practices, your Buddhic practices, Vedic practices, even. So when we go for common family code, if you want Islamic practices, Christian practices to be brought in within the cultural aspect of the family life, there are many rituals and which different groups and sections of. We are a diverse country, huge and diverse country, and people have their different cultural legacies. People want to bring and enjoy and celebrate. That should be facilitated. The idea is not to institute only one cultural practice in the family life, but to govern it through a common law. That when there is a matter of question of dispute, then you go to law, and which is trying to uh, resolve the dispute on the basis of contemporary legal practices, which are efficacious, which are judicious, which are just and reasonable, right? And therefore, the terminology common family code, CFC, is a better terminology. So it is in that larger umbrella that I have been writing for many years now. I think first of it was like 2017, etc. The Statesman had published that article when this triple talaq bill, etc., was in debate. So within that context, if we have common family code, or when we go and move towards common family code, the objective is to bring different sections of society together, then the question of religious charities involving land and property will come up. So we will have to decide at that point of time that how do we want to administer. Do we want to diversify, keep the different diversities in the tribunals and in the administrative bodies, in the council? Do we want to maintain religious diversity there only, or do we want to bring caste diversity also? How do we ensure the representation of a different section, that middle caste, lower caste, tribals, everyone finds a place, rather than in the name of religious diversity we bring only the upper caste, ashraf, savarna. So then we can think, if it is a common family code, then and then this whole fear that ashraf have, that our property will be taken up, and our property we will be discriminated against, that fear will also be gone. Because if the law says for religious property, religious, which has been constituted through charity, if it is to be taken over by the state, then it is not only Muslim property which will be taken over by.
By
You have to have a common law. Then the temple property, the Bodh Vihara property, the Gurudwara, everything will come into picture. It is only when you think of yourself as as an entity fixed in the corner, that someone can go to the corner and spit on your face, because that's what the corner is. When you are isolating yourself in the corner, and you want to remain there, and you don't want to move, and you do not want to acquire any social power, political power, economic power, that is what is democracy is going to then offer you. So failure to come to terms with democracy, therefore, the Ashraf, are the most ardent opponent of common family code. And my thinking is, my hunch is, that as soon as Pasmanda Bahujan agenda is about achieving common family code for the purpose of bringing different section of the society, BJP RSS will start opposing it. They will oppose it. They will not allow this to happen. It is our agenda. It's only because Ashraf are opposing it. They have designed their support for uniform civil. If Bahujan Pasmanda Bahujan agenda is to have common family code, for the purpose of creating unifying effect in the society, which is very, very crucial given the kind of challenges that we face, geopolitical challenges which are trying to fragment Indian society, trying to install all kind of conflict. It is very important for us to create unifying effect in the society. Common family code could be one very important tool through which unifying effect can be created. And these kind of discrimination and sense of siege and sense of uh, uh, hostility, etc., which Ashraf feel, they can also overcome. But for that, they will have to come to terms with democracy, and they will have to start thinking, well, when 3% of the Brahmins can think of themselves becoming chief minister
Yes.
and prime minister, why not 2% Ashraf? Their population is in 2%, and by rotation. I'm not saying by rotation everyone should have a chance, and Ashraf should not think that they cannot, have political power someday. But they will have to then stop patronizing Pasmada. Pasmada has their own politics, and just because there is some similarity of religion doesn't mean that the economic and political interests are identical. In fact, they are diametrically opposed. So if Pasmada Bahujan take up their own politics, they every section of the society has equal right to uh, participate in democratic life and have this legitimate ambition, desire of by rotation someday also sitting on the seat of power. But Ashraf said, no, 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 no. We do not want to get into the game of democracy. Democracy is anathema to us. We cannot design our cultural practices, social practices, which can empower ourselves and bring us to the center of political power. We will only play preservative minoritarian game. We only want to preserve ourselves, and then that is always it's like trying to hold sand in your hands. The tighter you hold, the faster it slips. That's how Ashraf politics is designed. So common family code is a larger thinking, larger project within which Waqf law or religious charities, properties which are tied to some kind of a charity for religious purposes and motivation. There you have to think not only Waqf as a religious charity, but all kinds of religious charities will have to be thought thoroughly, and they should be discussed. How do we manage them, administer them, and adjudication? How do we carry them out? And it cannot be really in terms of Muslim religion or Muslims and Hindus, etc., etc. It has to take into account the vast diversity, historical ownership and exclusion and dispossession on the ground of caste also, which is central rather than religion. So in that sense, I think common family code should be the right direction to discuss all the issues which Waqf Amendment Act, which is now a law, is throwing up, rather than taking this classical 100 years old. This is a 100-year problem. This is a 100-year failure, that we will only think within the religious paradigm, and we will think only in Muslim as one body, Hindu as one body, and Hindu Muslim uh, friendship or Hindu Muslim animosity. That paradigm is completely outdated. It has become totally irrelevant, and it has cost us immensely. It has not allowed our progress. Entire South Asia is bogged down as a result of this dominant paradigm of Muslim versus Hindu. As a Muslim or Hindu or whatever, Sikh and Christian and Buddha, as a form of expression of religious freedom, they are absolutely fine. People are, as part of democratic freedom, personal freedom, and group freedom.
Yeah.
You want to connect spiritually. Everyone has freedom to believe, freedom of conscience. That's what we have signed up to under the Constitution. People are free. That's not a
Skill or
problem.
development.
It's
Yes.
the question of social, economic, and political issues that we commonly, jointly uh, face, and then we need to jointly address it rather than trying to discuss in the terms of Muslim interest or Hindu interest. You can't preserve your interest that way. That is a recipe for disaster. That will give you a permanent sense of siege and hostility. Given that Brahmin Savarna have taken a democratic term, they have a democratic politics. They want to, from the days of Savarkar, they want to mobilize. They want to erase the differences of, at least on paper, caste or religion, and they want to modify, solidify, and then practice a majoritarian politics. Ashraf, on the other hand, want to practice only minority. Every section has to try to mobilize a majority, and think of their social and cultural practices in those terms, that how can my social and culture, how my social and cultural practices can be designed so as to rope in majority, at least the majority.
Correct.
You make an attempt to rope in 70, 80, 90% of population, then you get around say 30, 40, 50%, right?
Mm.
But if you say no, my population is 10% and I only want to mobilize and protect the interest of this 10%, then you are going to lose everything over there, or become just a footnote, uh, or tool at the hands of the dominant players who are playing the game of democracy.
Thank you, sir. I mean, we are short of time, but you have completely explained what where we need to, where this current work will amendment need to be, looked after. As you said, the Kamal family code should be the aim to, to bring in the majority, the people under as we call as a civil code, sort of, that kind of a family code, wherein the laws are, are implemented for entire population, not just a section of the society. And that is what the leaders of the Muslim, which are currently from the ashrafs, who are thinking in a minority mode, and how to, how to secure their benefits, sort of, in this context. So rightly suggested how a common family code should be should be thought about in future, and also in the current work bill controversy, how it needs to be thought about, how it needs to be implemented. And hopefully in coming years, this thought process will be taken into account, and more deliberation would be done. Sir, finally, going before, I would like to just understand, or just would like to have your message, and how from the current typhoon this bill is going through, and how it should be, looked after. I mean, a final message from you before leaving.
um, Now, if Ashraf are feeling extremely agitated and they have this urge of protest, etc., given what has happened, my advice to Ashraf would be that you protest against All India Muslim Personal Law Board and replace it with the Common Family Board. Try to undertake democratic politics. That's destructive. That is disastrous for yourself. If they can go a step further and try to reform madrasa education system and design it in such a way that different section of the society can live there and come there, visit there, and feel empowered, and share with each other a social and cultural relationship, which can then in the long term be translated into political relationship. That will be even better. So my advice, first and foremost, is to the Ashraf, who should undertake democratic politics, who should participate as equal stakeholder within the game of democracy. And also, there are authoritarian and anti-democratic and fascist tendencies which are inherent to democratic practice. Democracy does from time to time throw up, a Trump, a Hitler. So you have to equally participate even in those games in which negative aspect and problematic aspect of democracy, they can be contained. Those tendencies, authoritarian tendencies, can be contained in a common struggle with different section of the society, rather than it is my individual or my this corner and 10%, 5%, 2% section of the society. Rather than thinking of it in sectoral terms, we have to think in universal terms, and try to work out democratic society, democratic culture, democratic politics, which is based on the principle of liberty, equality, and fraternity, as Baba Sahib Ambedkar used to argue, borrowed from Buddhist philosophy rather than the European one. So, to partake in the social, cultural, economic, and political life with the spirit of fraternity, the spirit of unifying the society, trying to minimize the differences, trying to ensure that at least it does not erupt in any form of violent uh, uh, reaction, etc. Uh, and try to think of themselves as an equal citizen, equal stakeholder, and participant in the game of democracy. that will be for huge benefit for Ashraf themselves, and it will have a great calming effect, unifying effect, and soothing effect on different section of the society as well. So, with those words, thank you so much for having me. It was a
Thank
privilege
you.
to talk to you and an honor to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us on this very important topic. And we look forward to you in many other subjects wherever we need your guidance. And it's been very. I mean, the way you have I mean given a thought process. The subject need to be taught in a compassionate leadership. A
Yes,
sort of compassionate leadership where every section of the society is included and
yes,
been understood, and use a word which gives a inclusive signals to the community. So that is what I mean. I see from this exchange. I'm very much thankful for this talk, and thank you so much for coming on MNT News Network and sharing your knowledge on this. And we look forward to you in coming future. Thank you so much, sir. And to
thank
our viewers, this important topic, share in your circles, your friend circles, your families, so that they understand what it is about and understand the dimensions which Dr. Ayaz Ahmad is talking about, and look forward to the resolutions to the current dilemma. So thank you so much. Jai Bhim, Jai Mulnivasi, Jai Samvidhan to all the viewers, and see you next time. Thank you.
thank you for having me. Jai Bhim, Jai Samvidhan.
Jai Bhim, Jai Samvidhan.